Hi, Molly.
Hi there. I'm shuffling screens, so sorry.
Oh, no worries. So, in our life, shopping
Yes.
and all kinds of things. I just was thinking, so we have a couple of documents that were shared with you, and the font is so tiny. And the thing is, I haven't printed anything in almost 2 years, so it just really doesn't matter what kind of font you use. You could just always zoom into it. Right?
Yeah.
So that's my apology, and I'm sticking with it.
Okay, that works.
Because, right, Tunisia, when you will be sharing them, you could just like zoom them up a little bit, right? Make them bigger. Thank you. Well, I don't know who else is going to be joining or not. We know that Kiwi won't be able to join today, but that's probably the only one, at least I'm aware of.
Yeah, and it's the right after the lunchtime, so we'll take it just a couple minutes.
Okay.
Just because I do realize it's the 1 o'clock time, so.
Adrian Livingston will not be present.
Okay. Thank you. Well, another thing we just realized today, somehow we got into a bit of a scheduling situation. Another group of YDCs meeting at the same time.
Oh, okay.
But we've been there first, so that's
And we've been consistent.
right. But so it's possible that there is some kind of overlap of some YDC members.
Because right now I think I'm the only voting member here. Is that correct?
If you are. So we're gonna make all decisions that we need today.
I may make a couple of executive decisions.
There you go. Yeah, I'm just curious who else is on that policy on something committee.
So while we're kind of just waiting, I'm going to do a little bit of just juvenile justice work. And Jeff Milligan, I did send a text back to you. I will be in Marion County next week. And so we are going to do the hybrid. If you want to bring your stuff over, that would be amazing. Then I just will not even worry about driving out of town with it.
That will be good. Like I say, I think I have even a better scenario with a double microphone kind of a deal. So hopefully that'll work. So we'll have a chance to test, but I don't have to go very far. I also sent the invoice over to Trish this morning, the real one that she's going to pay to launch the key everything in. And I think you got the email from the trainers. So as soon as Trish pays that, I guess we're a go.
Okay, perfect.
Well, there's Christina.
Hello.
Hi, Christina.
Hi. So Brian just texted that he will join us at 2.
Okay.
Christina, before you joined us, I was telling Molly that some of the YDC members may have been double booked because there's another committee happening in conflict with ours.
Yes, I sent a message to Melissa letting her know that I was going to be able to be at the other one. But no, I'm just running around wearing 18 hats today, but that's okay.
I appreciate you choosing us.
Now, come on, Anya. Come on, Molly. I don't want to live with the aftermath if I, skipped this one. So. I did want to let you know, Molly, I have to leave at 2:30 because of an interview panel that I have to be in this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you, Sanji, for helping us out. So Parasa is on this team as well. And she's in the Policy, Rules, and Research Subcommittee. I don't know who else.
I guess we're okay. They just Well, Molly, do you want to get us started or
Yeah,
wait
I
a
do.
little bit? Because sometimes people join like 15 minutes later.
Yeah, I do think that would be the best, and we'll just kind of have some conversations and kind of go from there. I might change a little bit around the agenda based on that, but I would like to call the meeting of the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee together. And as I do so, just pull in and take a moment under this beautiful sunshiny day here in the gorge to acknowledge, do a land acknowledgement of the many tribes and the bands who call Oregon their ancestral territory and honor the ongoing relationship between the lands, plants, animals, and people indigenous to this place we now call home, the First Nation members. I'm currently on the lands of the river tribes, of the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs, Umatilla, Yakima, and Nez Perce. We also take a moment to recognize the continued sovereignty of the 9 federally recognized tribes in Oregon who have ties to this place and the subsequent bands within those tribes, and thank them for continuing to teach us and how we all might be better here together. And I think this afternoon, the piece that they bring to us and the learning that we can take from them is really a helpful thing to ground us in our work. So with that, Anya, I'm going to ask for some guidance and wisdom from you to maybe ask if we can talk about the compliance monitoring update or the delinquency prevention grants prior to the JCP plan resubmission review, so that maybe we have a few more members come on board and really give them the honor and the space, if that is okay. However, if you or Sanji, either one, have time commitments, I don't want to dishonor your time.
I don't, I'm all yours for 2 hours, but Sanjay, would that be okay if we do a compliance monitoring update first?
Good afternoon. Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. So Lindsay, you're it.
Hi, I think I have my notes already ready. It's gonna be short and sweet update. So I was on a compliance monitor call last week. The only 2 states that they mentioned that have submitted their manuals thus far are Ohio and Iowa. Both states have not heard anything back yet, feedback wise. Once Ohio gets theirs, his name is Danny. He's going to send me his manual so that I can view it side by side with what Ryan had left with us. Due to better weather and the mandates being lifted, the inspections should be resuming very soon. And OJJDP has not opened up reporting for FY21 yet. They just said the date is TBD. So I'm just keeping an eye out on that so that when they open it, I can start submitting data. And that will conclude my update for now.
Thank you, Lindsay. Well, Sam joined us. Christina wants to say something.
Oh, Lindsay, thanks for your report. I just was wondering, first of all, hearing that it's that in-person compliance monitoring will resume is music to my ears, which I can't believe I've ever been excited to hear that before. Usually it's like, oh, compliance monitoring, we have to get a bunch of stuff ready, right? If I'm being real, right? So do you have a schedule in mind, or is it all such new information, you know, about the timelines with the mask mandates being lifted, et cetera? Or do you have something you're working on that you're envisioning for that?
Well, of course, we're still playing catch up from 2020 because we're trying to do the 3-year period 100%. A lot of states on the call last week are trying to adhere to the 100%, but we're chipping away at it slowly. In December, I did do a handful by myself, solo inspections. And then we kind of paused it because we weren't sure with the Omicron what was going to happen. So yeah, I am going on vacation next week, but when I return, my plan is to go through the monitoring universe and work the oldest past due inspections first, those areas, hopefully like more locally and then spread out. But yeah, there's quite a few. There's like 190 last I checked for catch up, I believe it was. So yeah, we'll see.
Wow. Oh,
That's a lot.
wow. Well, sounds like you have a full plate ahead of you, but won't it be nice to get around and see people in person? Let's try to look for the silver lining, right?
Yes, I agree. And I'll get to meet them face to face and hopefully get a good grip on everything and everyone. So I'm excited.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, great question, Christina. And Lindsay, I think definitely, I know that I'm sure that you were left lots of great notes, but if there's anything any of us can do, please let us know.
I will. Thank you very much.
And I know that Ryan was able to present at, I believe, a couple of conferences to kind of talk. I think it was a chief of police conference. Because I know a lot of these places are like police departments or sheriff's office. And so as those positions change over, I think that's where we as a committee might be able to help you. Sometimes just explain the why and the what behind the compliance monitoring if you need us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I just learning as I go, and the reporting is going to be a big learning curve for me too. So I'll figure out how that all goes. The inspections I'm feeling more confident with because I've done a few, but yeah. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it, Molly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Lindsay is doing a great job. She's learning as she goes, and she's doing great. And she gets to introduce herself in her role as well. And you know how people kind of change places in state government. So sometimes yes, we assume that people know who we are and what compliance monitoring is, but then turns out we need to explain from the start, right? Lindsay, that was the case with DPSST. They referred us to Oregon Youth Authority saying, well, figure it out with them. And said, nope, we need you. That was in regards to training certification for police officers that they train on how to work with kids. But now they know who Lindsay is, right, Lindsay?
Guilty. And it's amazing too. There's been last week, there were a few technical assistance questions come in from different facilities. Like somebody from Molalla Police Department reached out to me, hey, this is who I am. I'm new to this position. Are we in compliance? Do you need anything from me? And I was like, I didn't say this, but I was like, how you know who I am? Like, so it's good to be out there and get to know everybody.
Good.
Thank you, Lindsay. So what should we do next?
So I'm going to go ahead and just say also following Ohio and Iowa, I know that we've looked at their reports and you guys have access to that. So that's great. The next is, let's talk, Anya, why don't you go ahead and talk about the prevention, delinquency prevention grants?
Sure. Tunisia, would you mind putting on that informational summary? Not of the potential awards, but what the program area is for and all this. Okay. So this is kind of going to be a long story, a little bit. Rather, not the whole story is going to be long, but the prelude to the story is going to be sort of a little bit confusing. So you may recall that we had real trouble, and I mean trouble, because there were just so many kind of conflicting guidances and issues, technical issues with the grant system that the feds have. So it was not until just recently, really, that we finally received fiscal year 19 and 90 and fiscal year 20 award. So by the time, and until you get the money, you cannot obligate anything. So kind of behind was that, kind of like we were with the life inspections. And at the same time, the feds changed rules around what can be funded within the program areas. So you may recall in the past, we used to make big investments in racial and ethnic disparities reduction. We made investments in restorative justice programs and so forth. Well, none of it is allowable anymore. So we've resubmitted our budget allowing for, yeah, and it gets crazier than that. So out of 100% of the allocation, you can use no more than 10% for admin. $20,000 has to go to state advisory group, which is the kind of money that we use to send you fabulous folk to Washington, D.C., for instance, for a conference, if you're still interested. Then no less than 66.6% has to be allocated to local jurisdictions. Out of that 66.6%, no less than 70% needs to be allocated to just a short menu of program types. So it seemed to us that delinquency prevention was broad enough that a lot of type of programming can fit into it. So what I sent, well, Tanisha sent out to you is the just a basic summary of what those funds are, what they can be used for. Can you see, by the way, is the font big enough, or do you want Tunisia to zoom in? Okay. So this is just what the feds require and not what we will in turn ask applicants to submit to us. It's very similar in a way to our other grants, but there are several differences. It has to be for kids who are at risk of committing a delinquent act, and it's also, they have to have some kind of evidence-based practice program component, and most importantly, they must collect federal required measures and follow all federal laws, of course. I think that's the end of it, right, of this document. So that's basically in a nutshell what these are for. Now, you may recall that we had quite a request for applications process for all of our other YDC grants, for the use promise and use option and workforce and gangs and just a variety. And you may also recall that less than half was funded, just because the competition was so fierce between or among the applicants that there was not a bad application. They were just like excellent, amazing, and through the chart, right? So what my colleagues at YDD and I did, we've looked through those applications that didn't get funded. And Tunisia, could you put the next one on, please? Yeah, now we probably need to make it bigger. Okay, so thank you, appreciate. So what we decided to do, well, after consulting, was both the Fed and procurement, just to make sure that we're within our authority to issue direct awards. With literally, it was a like tiny column. I went through every single application that didn't get funded, and I was looking for things like, will this program as proposed be addressing delinquency prevention in kids specifically? So, and also keeping in mind that how much money we had, which is about what, $750,000 available. So those were the two main components, and whether the applicant will be able to collect federally required output and outcome data. So with that, we've selected 8. You will see that the last one, Maslow project, is a smaller award, because that was, you know, I hate to say that, kind of leftover money that we patched together, and that's how much it was. So you will see that the applicants will vary, both geographically and the type of programs. You will see here some mentoring and working with runaway and homeless youth, and there are some and Native American youth working on rehabilitation and a variety of things. And there's restorative justice programs, and there are school-based interventions too. So what I would like for you as a committee to consider is supporting the YDD staff recommendation to issue awards to these applicants, and make a recommendation on the Youth Development Council meeting to go ahead and start the process of awarding the applicants. And of course, you can see the, you know, the full applications if you're interested as well. This is just an application summary.
So I'm going to ask just quickly for any questions from Christina or Sam. And then I don't know that we're going to be able to take any formal action because we don't have a quorum, but let's talk about what that looks like. Christina, go ahead.
My question is, first of all, I think it's a great idea with the short time frame that you're working on to look at applicants who weren't able to get funded through those other streams. So I like that approach. My question is really about, I'm familiar with some of these organizations, but not all of them. Geographically, do you know off the top of your head where they're located? Anya, is one concern or question, not concern, that's too strong of a word, but one question I have is about how is this money being shared across the state, or is it clustered in the metro area predominantly?
It's actually not. So I'm gonna do something like super drastic right now. I'm gonna open my files because I don't want to make up information. I should tend to do sometimes. So I know Center for Dialogue and Resolution, that's Eugene. NARA is in Portland, but it serves all Native American youth in the state. So it will cover all tribal and metro and wherever youth reside. Just a sec. Why am I on here?
And Anya, I know this is Sam. I know you're trying to spend unused or carryover or leftover money. And I'm curious as to Serendipity Center. Is that the Serendipity, the therapeutic school in Portland?
Correct. But they serve Washington, Clackamas, Multnomah, and Columbia counties. So it was this particular
right.
program.
And they serve pretty much 100% school-placed kids. And then and I don't know if that's the type of kids YDD serves, and they're all special ed, and they're there for long term. And yeah, I'm just saying,
Yeah,
they run a good program, and their motto is 1-to-1. For every kid there, they have an adult there.
right. So I thought it was very interesting, and something that we never funded was at least federal grants. I thought, and they're using the behavioral, what is the University of Oregon model, the positive behavioral supports model. Okay, so alternative use activities is Coos Bay. We just talked about serendipity, right? Use area will be serving Columbia County youth, just as it says here. And Center for Dialogue is Eugene. NARA we just talked. Alternative use is Coos. Jackson Street Youth Shelter, that's Lynn County, and they're serving Lynn and Benton. Oh, Tanisha, if you don't mind, could you move the screen because I think we'll have more than that. Now, Pathfinders of Oregon, this is the program that works with kids whose parents are incarcerated. So that's mentoring inside out, which I think is a very important programming. And that's that's in every correctional facility in Oregon. So it's not like specific to a particular geographic location. Tanisha, if you don't mind, could we go down now? After alternative use activities, which is Coos and Jackson, we talked. Yeah, and this Maslow project, this one was specifically working in Jackson, Josephine, and I think in Douglas too as well. So unfortunately we didn't see any unfunded applications from the eastern side of the mountains that would fit that parameters. But it goes from north to all the way to south.
And just as a FYI, AYA or alternative youth activities in Coos, back when the Coos detention site was open in Coquille, they were our educational partners for there. They helped with the education there within Coos County. So they do have experience working with our type of youth.
That's good to know. Thank you, Sam. And another thing, keep in mind, and Jeff Milligan is here, we currently have an award to Kojak as well. So we're covering Central Eastern with another award, also a federal one. I don't know if it makes sense, like if that's an equitable enough distribution, but I was just trying to respond to say it's not all metro based.
So, Christina, any other questions?
No, that's it for now. Thank you.
So I'm going to just talk about process just a tiny bit. I think if we send it out to the group, Anya, and ask for a response back, let everyone know that you presented these to the Juvenile Justice Committee, but there was not a quorum, and ask for thoughts or inputs back so that we could report out at the YDC on general support and or not, and hopefully there's general support.
So our process was, at least my intent was, I certainly wanted the Juvenile Justice Committee members to see these documents first.
Mhm.
But after this meeting today, we will send them to the full council membership.
Sure.
So everybody who is on the council will have an opportunity to see exactly what you're looking at. So hopefully those Juvenile Justice Committee members who are not able to join us today, at least they will have an opportunity to preview them before Thursday.
Then at the YDC, at least I can say they were presented to us, and the few of us that were at our meeting were able to talk about it. I just want to make sure that
Sure.
if there is the capacity for the YDC to know that the Juvenile Justice Committee had the opportunity to be presented those. So that was really just my only point, was just articulating our engagement. So that works.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, after this meeting is over, I will share those two documents with Melissa, was asked to send to the rest of the council members.
And then during the meeting, what I'm going to say is we ask questions about geographic diversity, and we talked about the fact that we had a couple people familiar with the programs and they shared their information, and kind of just run it from there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Anya.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Sam.
Okay, and now then, Sonji, we are on for our JCP plans. So we are going to have time back in our afternoon. I will be the favorite person, I think probably your favorite chair for a while. So Sonji, will you please lead us through the plan review?
So Molly, before Sonji gets on, so Tanisha, do you mind putting that spreadsheet together? Not together, I'm sorry, I'm not even making any sense anymore. The smart sheets. We have new smart sheets. Aren't you guys excited?
I like the smart sheets. Those were kind of a little gem.
I'm excited. I like the smart sheets.
So before Sanjay gets to the real thing, I will tell you just like the general thing. So the general thing is we've put together smart sheets. So after this meeting, we'll send you invites so you can, like the same way we did with the total JCP plans. And then there are some columns where you can put your scores, and there are some comments and all kinds of options here. What we do need to do after Sanjay gives you like the essence of what to look for in a question 6 resubmission, we do need to divide people into groups. And that's, Molly, I don't know if you will be the assigning or something. So my hope is after this meeting today, we can send out the communication for people who are not here today. So here, there's your access to Smartsheet, and these are the counties that have been assigned to you. And we'll just take it from there. Does it make sense? Sounds good. And now Sanji, sorry, Sanji, I didn't mean to like get in the beginning.
Oh, no worries. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Anya. Thank you, Molly. I hope you all are well and were able to find moments to enjoy the sun that was out this weekend. So as Anya stated, many thanks to her and to Nasia for finalizing the smart sheet that you see. The plans are ready for review. I did have the opportunity to interact with a couple of the counties who requested that I look at their drafts prior to formal submission. And for those who don't know, I am technically out on medical leave right now. I'm just popping in for this meeting. Thankfully, able to join. And so there were a couple of counties who, and I was out all last week. So there are a couple of counties who kind of were right there on that border of me leaving for leave and asking me to look at their draft. And I will note those in the smart sheet that these are their submissions, but if I see anything that I feel like they can update or edit based on my meeting with them, if they were counties who participated in the meet and greet, I will advise you all in a note or something to that effect that, hey, X county may be updating this portion based on my recommendation. And other than that, Nasia, if you could please put up the document that's the juvenile crime prevention resubmission criteria. It should be in the folder as well. And thank you, Sam. I really appreciate it. So you all have seen this document before, and I've had an opportunity to look at some of the resubmissions just briefly, and then of course, some of those that I had the opportunity to review prior to their formal resubmission. And I feel like at this point, I'm kind of in a juxtaposition. I don't want people to be doing this just to say, oh, what do I need to do to get satisfactory or above? But we know that because this process has been laid out that way, and because it, has evoked concern, different emotions, which are completely understandable, we also have to honor the fact that people want to, quote unquote, be satisfactory or above. And I respect that. But because it's been an interactive process, and have tried to reiterate that this is an ongoing living process at any given time. If there is clarification, additional information, or questions, we will reach out to you to provide the opportunity for you to address that. So in my opinion, moving forward, everyone should have the opportunity to get satisfactory or above. And one thing that I will note that was recommended from one of the counties that I had the opportunity to do the meet and greet with is that, and I think we've kind of touched on this briefly, is that something similar for the whole plan resubmission would be extremely helpful as far as like guiding questions, insight into what a full answer or response would look like for all portions of the county juvenile crime prevention plan submissions. So hopefully this will be the beginning of establishing a document that would insert this into a fuller document for the whole submission, if that's what you all decide is appropriate. So exceptional Again, I'm not going to read these verbatim, but we can discuss since we have a little bit of time. And Molly, you are the GOAT. I think people will be, and for those who don't know what GOAT is, greatest of all time. Just to clarify.
That's very
I'm
kind,
not calling
but-
Molly a GOAT. That's an acronym. Compliment.
I have some, it's okay.
So just to, since we have a little bit of time cushion, to look at the previous and the current, and those are carrying over verbatim. Right. Some people think Tom Brady is a GOAT. I guess his numbers, you can't really dispute that, Sam. Like as if we're going by Super Bowl wins, he definitely would get it, huh? But there are some people who might still think that there are just as capable quarterbacks out there. But that's another conversation. We digress. So carried over the language from the previous evaluation and now have added the corresponding points that would go that, and that's open. This is just something, these 9, 7 to 8, 5 to 6, 0 to 4 is something that kind of Brian, Anya, and I presented for what a corresponding score might look like if you are breaking down each of those components into being worth 3 points each. So exceptional addresses all components of the prompt in an outstanding manner, demonstrated clear, concise, thorough knowledge and understanding of the subject matter. Satisfactory addresses the prompt in an adequate manner, average knowledge and ability with minimal to no apparent deficiencies noted. Needs improvement. I would say that was quote unquote passing because it would have addressed it in some way in a fair manner, but showed that there still is not fully sufficient knowledge of the subject matter and, as stated, room for improvement. Unsatisfactory, just did not sufficiently address the prompt and has not demonstrated knowledge of the subject matter. And so exceptional would mean all the points were possible were received, 9 out of 9. Satisfactory, 7 to 8 out of 9. Needs improvement, 5 to 6 out of 9. Unsatisfactory, 0 to 4 out of 9. And just to shed light on some of the counties who received unsatisfactory, and it could have been an oversight, which is why this process of communication and just, and one of the counties that I met with kind of acknowledged that, like, I just dropped the ball on that when it was a complete oversight because there was nothing there. So if there's no writing to review or evaluate, like, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place if you're doing a true evaluation or a review of something to give somebody a check mark on that. And so again, in my opinion, at this point in the game, there should be no opportunities for unsatisfactory, but you just never know. And of course, the infamous question 6, which fell under the heading of evidence-based practice and cultural appropriateness, the bullet point prompt that we are referring to, description of cultural strategies, including addressing racial and ethnic disparities identified in your data analysis and inclusion. Tanasia, can you please go to the next page of this document? So we broke those down into components that were encompassed in that statement and made each of these components worth 3 points. So one conversation I had with the people in the counties I had the opportunity to meet with, just give a sentence of what you, at least one sentence of what you gain or gather from looking at your JJIS racial and ethnic disparity report. For example, our 2020 JJIS racial and ethnic disparity report indicates that there is not enough with the asterisk situation, there's not enough numbers to provide a valid report or whatever that asterisk verbatim language states on JGIS. It has the asterisk and then it defines what that means. We believe that this is an accurate depiction, or, you know, we have looked beyond this report to determine if in fact there are numbers of youth who have been in our county have not, you know, are corresponding to show that there are no disparities. Something where you have at least shown that you have looked at the JGIS report. I think that if it's, for me personally, if it were acknowledging, I mean, because that's one of the realities that I hope conversation continues about. What is the layout of this work if in fact a county can't show, you know, if they have very few youth of color or have not had very many youth of color in their facilities or in their programs, is we don't have a diverse body of youth, or we have not had disparities because, you know, we're majority white population. Is that an acceptable answer? And from different perspectives, it could be. And so I think that's something that the committee moving into the next biennium can, you know, have conversations about. If you're looking at the full plan and also breaking down components of the plan, including the racial and ethnic disparity component and cultural strategies, if saying that is okay. But for me, if they at least addressed it, you know, I would probably give them 2 points out of 3 on that section. Of course, if there was a more robust answer and they went beyond just saying, well, this is what my JGIS report says, then in my opinion, that would be indicative of the full 3 points. I can't quite envision a situation where might get a 1, but I'm sure there's one out there. Maybe a sentence that says, we don't know about our disparities. At least they said something, but, you know, not quite hitting the mark. Cultural strategies, 3 points. Again, we provided a research definition of what cultural strategies can encompass. And if you quickly scroll to the next page, Tanasia, please. So if there are disparities, I think this is an opportunity for distinction between the scale of 1 to 3 or 0 to 3. If their JGIS report does have a red box where it indicates the potential disparities, did they discuss that? Did they say what they thought it meant, if they thought it was accurate? If they have looked further into that, I think those are distinguishers where if in fact the county does have disparities indicated on their JGIS report, they went further, and that could, in my mind, distinguish 2 points versus 3, or possibly even 1 point in that situation. So I guess just so for clarity and keeping it kind of organized, are there any thoughts or questions about that component and giving it a 0 to 3?
Sam or Christina?
Hi, this is Sam, and my question was, so if I heard correctly, so I think in the beginning, the process was a team looked at, like 2 or 3 people looked at each individual submission. But then now with the new rubrics or the new thing, is it only Sanjay looking at the submissions, or is it a team looking at the submissions again?
I think we're going to recommend a team, Sam. That is, and I think that's where I may take some executive chair powers and do some assigning. But I think Sonji's done her due diligence on the front end to work and offer technical assistance and answer questions and do that piece. And now it's up to the committee to do some of our work. But I'm going to ask back to Anya and Sonji if I'm correct.
You are correct as far as I'm concerned, right? So,
Yes, I would agree.
Sanji, do you mind repeating the question you asked at the end before Sam spoke? I want to make sure I'm tracking because I think Molly was asking Sam and I to respond to that.
My question was, were there any points of discussion about component 1, which is, please back up again, I'm sorry, Tanasia. Identify and analyze racial and ethnic disparities in local data, which this component has a point maximum of 3 points for this portion of their response. Were there any points of discussion about what would distinguish a 0 to 3 point score for component 1?
I think it's really just around clarifying questions for Sonji. Is that correct, Sonji?
Yes, like if you all were looking at, and it's, you know, it's hard in this situation to have examples, and definitely don't want to put anyone's submission, you know, up where we could, you know, potentially look at one together. But if you were looking at a submitted response and trying to determine, okay, am I giving this person 0, 1, 2, or 3 points for this component of their response? What am I looking for based on what information has been shared? And again, Tanasia, please go to the next page. So again, some counties are going to indicate that based on their JJS report. Let me get the specific language that it says if there are asterisks.
It's statistically insignificant. It's,
Right.
Yeah.
I've been it all my entire life in juvenile justice. It's statistically insignificant.
Right.
But I am therapeutically valuable. Just ask me.
Indeed. And so they also note it's with the language of here, just a second. The asterisk indicates their key definition for an asterisk says insufficient numbers to provide reliable results. And so when a county has a report that's full of asterisks, there's no data whatsoever, either indicated by green, which is favorable, less than 1 for the relative rate index, or higher than 1, which would be shaded in red on the report, which is unfavorable and potentially indicates that there are disparities that exist. So for the counties who have a report that is all asterisks, I encourage them to express that, and any other language that they felt could say we've looked further, or we think this is an accurate assessment of our county racial and ethnic disparities numbers. And that's, or even though we have this style of report, we are still doing X, Y, and Z to make sure that we prevent or address disparities, even if they aren't depicted in our JJS report. So to me, those would be answers that are moving toward a 3. But for counties who do have red or green boxes. Red in particular, which would indicate that disparities may exist, they need to start answering these guiding questions. Are there? Yes, no, yes, which decision points? That you see disparities, are there anything in place to address them? And also some counties, for instance, there was a county who had a 7 RRI on Native American referrals, but it was only like 2 or 3 young people, and it was one incident. And so that kind of just skewed their numbers completely. In those instances, I encouraged the county to explain that, because if you look at it, it would be kind of shocking, like, oh my goodness, Native American youth in this county are 7 times more likely to be referred than white youth. Then, you know, we would be ringing alarms and trying to go do a immediate intervention on site. So there are instances where there might be caveats that need to be explained, and hopefully those counties are doing that. One thing that I'm thinking of as we are discussing this is also having a column where we attach that county's RRI report so that it can be accessible to you all if you want to look at their RRI report as you're reviewing their response. Because that may be helpful in understanding the having a clear understanding of their landscape in the context of their responses. So just making a mental note to add a column that would have because their PDF form, they can be downloaded, and make sure that those get attached to the smart sheet. But again, and this would repeat for all of the components. So describe cultural strategies is the next component. Again, on the previous page, there was a lengthy full description of what cultural strategies could include. And now we have the guiding questions of what cultural strategies are you implementing? Explain the goals. What training or professional development opportunities related to cultural strategies and racial and ethnic disparities will be offered in 2 years of this plan? If no trainings are planned, how can the Youth Development Division help in this area? And so one thing that I will note is that as you're reviewing these, it's not going to be a cookie cutter. And I encourage the counties not to necessarily try to like have all of this information and have a response to every one of these guiding questions in their plan. They can tailor it to what they are truly doing and what is potentially applicable to their landscape. And so in looking at cultural strategies and even inclusiveness, like for instance, one county discussed like the familiarity of the staff with the community, and having that relationship was to their benefit. And they felt like that was something that was important in addressing racial and ethnic disparities, and having staff with shared lived experience. And those are the types of things you may see, or they're working with community partners. I mean, I don't have to like really break this down to you all because you're brilliant, but just some of the things that I have seen in reviewing some of the drafts so far, which were not included previously. So that this, at least there are small indications that this process has helped people develop more robust answers, or even reminded them of, oh yeah, we're doing this and we didn't write it down before. And the same with, Tanasia, if you could please back up one page again. Thank you. The same with component 3, explain how you achieved an inclusive organization, inclusive of, but not limited to, race, ethnicity, language, gender, sexual orientation, geography, etc. one thing in rural counties, access is a big barrier. Transportation, counties where there are higher populations of Latinx and Hispanic youth, language access. And, you know, some counties said that, you know, we have translators on deck, but in my X years of being here, we've never used it. Or, you know, many of our youth are English speaking, but it's potential their families are not. So those type of things, I encourage them to, at least if it was applicable to their landscape, to kind of briefly touch on those things and incorporate that with the services and the funds that this JCP grant money is being used for. So I think, you know, as you're looking at the responses, it will organically, in my opinion, be evident of how a score might flow. You know, less is not necessarily more, but when you're me, more is best. So some people don't necessarily like, you know, and then there are times where you could do a kitchen sink response and you clearly did not, and unfortunately that happened in some of the previous responses. Like there were eloquent, long responses under this prompt, but they had nothing to do with what we asked. So I think you will be able to look for that as well when you're scoring these, like, are they answering the call of the question? And we've broken this prompt down into 3 questions, and it's not one exact way that this could look, but I think you will get a sense of if they're moving in the right direction with their response. And they may be able to do that in a paragraph, like address some of these things or all of these things with not a lot of written verbiage. So, you know, I trust that you all are beyond even me and being able to use the scale to determine if someone would be indicative of receiving a 0, a 1, or 2, or 3 in addressing these components of the prompt. And moving forward, you know, for reviewer friendliness, it may be beneficial in the future to have it, if this similar format will move into the future, to have them address the prompts under like a heading, like have a subheading of identify racial and ethnic disparities and their response, describe cultural strategies and their response, how you achieve inclusive organization and their response. That is definitely more reviewer friendly, because you know which component you're potentially grading. If it's all kind of together, you have to do a little bit more work to pull out what your score for each particular component will be. So that's, you know, something to think about as well, now that I'm thinking through it and talking it out. But going back to the first page, please, Tanasia. So again, I mean, and, you know, looking at each component, you know, I trust that you can kind of say, you know, is this a really good, efficient, and effective response to what we're asking them, especially now that we've provided more information for them to use in the development of their response? Or, you know, is it just a generic, because the reality is there are generic responses, and, you know, that's the way of the world. Like, you know, as a former instructor and as a former student, you know, I knew when I was just trying to get anything I could with a very basic response and make it look like I was brilliant, but didn't have a clue about what I was saying. So I think, and again, this is a process of growth and opportunity for engagement. And so if there's like a sentence or two that might develop it, I feel like it's incumbent upon us to say, hey, you know, think you could have added this, and that would clarify that, and not just potentially say whatever you have is the gospel of what we're gonna not allow you to change at, you know, after this deadline.
Okay. Sanji, I have to just tell you that I agree with this work and these tools. I think it will help not just question number 6 in the 23-25 biennium. I think it will help all the questions. And I actually think that I've heard comments from colleagues that it was, you know, sometimes you just get into pilot drive, and we meaning Juvenile Justice Subcommittee, as well as we just didn't put out these really good details that you and Anya and Brian had pulled together for the group and for the directors now. So I really appreciate that work. Christina or Sam, any other comments?
I agree with what you just said, Molly, and I also think there are some ways when we're putting out the guidelines next time that we can, for lack of a better term, you know, just really make it very, I don't want to say spoon feed, but explicit. And I think that's really good guidance that Sanji just went through with us. But I know I used to be in a county where we had on paper, you know, most of our population was Caucasian when I was in Southern Oregon. And there were still ways to dig beyond and behind that. So like, for example, not to get into the weeds, but like saying, oh, okay, so it says we only had 12 African-American youth referred to our department for the entire year. So, okay, that's, you know, I hate that term, statistically insignificant, but, you know, the issue is typically if it's not over 50 kids, then it's not enough. So, okay, we only had 12, but then when you start pulling it apart and looking at, for example, on our JJS reports, of the recidivists that we had for our department, how many of those 12 kids ended up in that group? And, oh, wow, did we do all the same, you know, peeling it back and looking at what we did or did not do with those groups of kids as compared to what we normally did was interesting. So that's the kind of stuff I think my mind is thinking about, okay, how can we put prompts in the guidelines for the next time that we do this that will help people maybe think and pull out that information, even if your numbers related to kids of color are smaller, doesn't mean that, you know, I hate, like I said, I hate statistically insignificant. I think every kid in our community counts. And I think that there's still lessons to be learned. And then if you're a department that does surveys of families and parents, are there different family members, parents, and youth? Are there differences in the responses that you get for different groups of kids, even if it's just a small number? You know, if you only have 12 Black kids in your community and 6 of them are giving negative response, you never get 100% response rate, but you know what I'm saying? If there's things to look at that I think can really inform, even if they are, quote, statistically insignificant.
Absolutely. Thank you, Molly and Christina. I wholeheartedly agree with you, Christina. That's one thing I, brought up in my conversations during the technical assistance, is that this is about the rate at which even the smallest population are encountering. So, you can have disparities with 12 youth. If, 6 of them have had encounters with the juvenile justice system, that's 50%, which is, pretty significant. And you need to try to address or look deeper into why, you only got like not just about 10 fingers of Black young kids, and they're all somehow half of them are making their way to the juvenile justice system. There might be something that could look beyond that. And that's definitely something that was encouraged. And, I agree with you about trying to provide those tools and information that can help to kind of look beyond that asterisk, because some people really get stuck on that. Well, we're good. We don't have disparities. It says our numbers are, not enough. But the flip side of that is that could be the absolute truth. Like, it could just be that, none of the Black or brown youth of that very small population encountered the justice system, and they truly don't have any disparities. So it's always going to be on a case-by-case basis. But if you do see Black and brown youth coming through your department, even if the population is extremely small, you still want to make sure that they're not coming through disparately. And then also, again, I keep reiterating this body of work as public servants and government workers, we are charged with having a baseline level of knowledge about diversity, equity, and inclusion, no matter what our community looks like. And that should be, because at any given moment that can change, but it's also being professionally developed enough to represent a community of all people. And I think that should be a goal of every government body.
Yeah, and so I really appreciate that. I also I'm learning how to use data. So I actually, I come from an even smaller county in my first world, and where I had one young person in the institution, right? And I was the highest overrepresented county in the state because I had one young person in. And there was a story there still to tell. And so I think it's just practicing using data. 4 years ago, for some reason, we were putting every girl in detention. That was just the only thing that showed up in detention were girls. And so if we learn how to use data, racial data, gender data, gender identity and sexual orientation, there's always a story. I have never been in a county that's been statistically significant. And that is totally okay with me, because I joke, but I am therapeutically valuable. And you said it, Sanji, every data point has a story. And I think that's the beautiful part about learning how to be data knowledgeable and data literate, so that you can look at it not just once every 2 years to do a JCP prevention grant, but also to be able to look at trends and in the moment. So I really just appreciate all of the work that you've put into this, and the technical assistance that the counties have engaged with you on to really understand, one incident with some numbers, but what was that story around the incident? So again, I just really appreciate that. I am going to ask, because I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, and I apologize, how many question number 6s do we have to review?
23.
Okay. And how many committee members are there?
Ooh, let's see if I can pull up my little updated committee thing that I just shared previously for this committee. Including Sam and Nakia, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay, so yes, and that number's been out there a couple times. So if the three of us each take a lead, because we've had the benefit of really listening to Sonji's explanation of the rubric and the experience. And each of us took 7 plan teams, and we're going to be the leads on those teams. And so it's only question number 6. So I know there's some counties probably have 2 pages. Some counties may have up to 6 pages, but it's not the full plan. If we each took, actually, each of us took 8 and only one has to do only 7, I think that gets us to 23.
And only, sorry to cut you off, Molly. There's only 8 members.
Okay, and then Taneja, Anya, and Sonji assign the other members to us. How fast do we have to have these by the YDD meeting next week? Is that correct?
Have them reviewed?
No, not quite.
No, I think you all designated until May 31st.
Oh my gosh, that took just like, moments off you gave me moments of my life back.
Okay, well, not quite. Well, yes and no, not that long, because we should touch base about the plans at the next meeting in April.
But if we could get our teams assigned in the next week, just touch base, and if that is okay, if there are 8 of us, that will be 3, 3, and 2. Is that right? 3, 3, and 2. And the one that has 2 doesn't have to do the 8th plan. They get to do 7 plans. And if you guys will kind of balance out the number of pages to those plans to this team, and kind of do some behind the scenes work, does that seem like a reasonable approach? Because I do think what we just went through with Sonji is really good grounding information to be team leads. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a good plan for us. So we will review the preview of the plans to make sure that they're equitably distributed. We will assign team members to Molly, Christina, and Sam. And then we will have a first check-in of the next meeting in April to see, because the idea is to get every single resubmission to, if not excellency, then to a very good stage. So that's why we dedicated so much time for it, so that the final approval of the plans or question 6 will not happen until June.
Yep. Okay.
So we will have enough time for feedback, communication, and if needed.
Perfect. Okay. And Christina, Sam, and Molly don't necessarily have to coordinate like team meetings or anything, but if they're assigned, we can be the people to answer questions of our team members if they need any kind of questions answered. Is that fair?
Right. Well, kind of Sanjay did training of training. That was an impromptu one.
Okay.
Right, and Molly, to your point, like when our triads meet, if Anya or Sanjay could also participate. I know they're super busy, but to be as technical assistants, and just in case there's questions from the other Juvenile Justice Committee members.
Sure.
I'd appreciate that. I'm not requiring it, but something to be good, nice to have.
Sure, Sam, you know where to find me. But now I have a little confession announcement to make. Sanjay, is that okay with you? Well, unfortunately, after opening that can of worms, which was a great thing to do, Sanjay, so appreciate you doing it. And look at us where we are, and we're gearing up for the future. and we're in a good place now with you've provided quite a bit of assistance to counties and excellent job, but now you're leaving us. You're just like leaving us in the middle of the road. I'm super sad about it. I'm super excited for your future, brilliant future, but I'm really sad for us because you will be leaving YDD. We'll know where to find you should we have any specific questions, right? So do you want to tell folks about your amazing new opportunity?
Thank you, Anya. Yes, as Anya has noted, and Brian has shared with the Policy Research Management Committee, I think I may have mixed that all up, but I have received an email already because that committee was made aware. It's very bittersweet. And for those who don't know, like, I'm very much guided by my faith and my higher power, and have surrendered my very imperfect self to him. And so he is directing me on to something that I desire, which is to advance in my career. And I've been blessed with the opportunity to receive a leadership position with still with the state of Oregon, with a different agency. And I will be leading the legislative direction and also the strategic partnerships and communication, I have to think about it, section of the Oregon current Office of Emergency Management. In July, it will be the Oregon Department of Emergency Management. And for those of you who don't know, prior to my work here and my work at community college and my work at the Texas legislature, I spent 4 years in grad school in Baton Rouge and also worked at the Louisiana version of emergency management. It's the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness there in Louisiana. And so I have some background in emergency preparedness and management. And so this position will allow me to really utilize all of my skills. And, you know, it's an opportunity to advance a little bit into a true leadership position. And so I'm nervously excited. And again, but very, very sad to be departing the Youth Development Division. I will not get emotional, but like, this team has been my family away from home since I moved to Oregon 2 years ago. And they are the people that I spend the bulk of my day with for the past 2 years. And so, you know, it's been a tremendous opportunity for growth, learning, building relationships. It's been challenging at times, but in all, I think hopefully some good has come out of it. And I really, really appreciate the support and the work that you all, the Youth Development Council body, does, and your dedication to it, all that you bring to juvenile justice in various capacities in the state and in this nation, and for helping to move this work forward. Thank you, of course, to Brian and Anya for their guidance and support and redirection and challenging, and to my teammates with the YDD. And Jeff is here, which is ironic, and Sam also, because those are two colleagues that, you know, I had the opportunity to have in-depth conversations with outside of these spaces. And I really appreciate both of them for the embracement, for the information they provided, for just the conversations that we had the opportunity to have. And I'm not going too far. I told my teammates at the YDD, maybe one day we can meet under the cherry blossoms and just have coffee or lunch, or at Ike's. Do y'all remember Ike's? Like, I think that was one of the go-to places around the Capitol complex. So like everyone in that vicinity, my heart just thinks about how much they may have changed in the past 2 years, but hopefully that will change again. So I will be in Salem 3 days a week and working virtually 2 days a week for right now. So not going very far. Definitely, thankfully, this is a public body and I can join this meeting. I can join the YDC meeting. I can join any committee meeting as a citizen and make sure that you know that you have my full support and continuing to be a champion for this work, particularly for our most vulnerable and unapologetically our Black and Brown youth from my perspective, and all underrepresented youth because, they continue to need our intentional attention. So thank you. I made it through it without a tear. It didn't work that way when I was telling the YDD team, but it's very bittersweet. But I know that this is what's meant to be at this moment in time. So I accept that and excited and nervous and sad, all the emotions at the same time. But thank you all so much.
Thank you, Sanji. I feel really lucky. I got to meet you before the COVID.
I know.
And so
right.
There was a few of us at a couple meetings, and I just feel really grateful for that. And thank you for all of your passion and holding us to a higher conversation. And yeah, Christina, congratulations. And legislative work is fun. Policy work is fun. So.
Hey, Molly, can I just throw my, I'm sorry to have joined the meeting late, but I was in that Policy Research and Rules Committee meeting and been on for a little bit of the conversation, but wanted to be here and not only to just check in on the proceedings of the committee and do whatever I could, but also because of this news, which we knew we were going to share in the committee. And so congratulations to Sanji. I mean, I just reflect on Sanji, the big, enormous steps and leaps that you've done yourself. And I don't know your whole resume, but I know stepping from various states, Arkansas and Louisiana and Oregon, and now a couple of agencies within Oregon, those are big steps to take. And therefore, with those big steps, they're big shoes to fill. So we appreciate your contributions, wish you all of the best, are excited that you will not be far. And I said this to you, just keep being the strong advocate that I know you are for those young people who, as you said, are in sort of, in the words I often use, they have a ton to offer, and as you mentioned too, are often most vulnerable. So thanks.
Yeah, Christina, go for it.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to say, Sanji, the last in-person meeting that we had of our local public safety coordinating council was March 2nd, 2020, I think it was. And it was the day our county declared a state of emergency. We were the first county because of COVID. And that was the day you came and did a presentation about racial and ethnic disparities, youth, how it impacts youth. I mean, it covered a lot of ground, as you might remember. And I wanted you to know that, so you have that historical moment of being the last in-person presentation that we've had in over 2 years. But in the summer of 2020, our LIPSIC was meeting, and we were having a discussion about whether or not we should form a new standing committee as part of LIPSIC, because historically Clackamas County hasn't had a lot of standing committees like we did when I was up in Multnomah County. And part of the conversation was, so I'm happy to report the new standing committee was a committee called Advancing Racial Justice and Public Safety is what we decided to name that committee. But in the course of all of that conversation about whether we should do this or not, a couple of our members actually brought up your presentation and things you had said in your presentation, and said, I remember one of them saying, we had an eloquent young woman here who came and shared her expertise back when we used to be able to meet in person, and talked about what you had shared with us. So I think that sometimes you go out there and you, all of us, we try to do good work, and sometimes we never know how that ripples out, or how maybe that could have an impact. We just never hear. So I've been, negligent in telling you that it contributed to that decision. And I'm really excited because this group has done some really good things. And now we just had a presentation. We're going to be on video. We're going to be working with Portland State to do a lot of work around what kind of process do we develop to really look at things with an equity lens, and also what voices do we not have at the table that we need to have there. I could talk about this all afternoon, but my point is, you are part of that history of that happening in our county. So you were the first person who ever came and did a whole presentation on disparities, to my knowledge, in Clackamas County. So anyway, I got to go. I'm on an interview panel. I just want to say thank you. And I wanted to share that with you. So there's a ripple that you didn't even know maybe that you've had, but you did. So thank you.
Christina, that means the world. Thank you so much. I really appreciate knowing that. And again, for all that you bring to this work and what you're doing in Clackamas County. And I hope that you will be open to helping your counterpart counties across the state and continuing to share, the successes and challenges that you all have, and, and be one of the mentors, if that ever comes to pass, for counties who are seeking to grow in this area of work. So thank you all in Clackamas County for being so intentional about it.
Well, thanks. And I'm sorry I've got to leave, but
I understand.
wish you all the best. I didn't hear when your last day at YDD
Oh,
is.
I didn't share that. So my official last day is March 18th. 11 days from now, but I will be on leave for the most part the rest of this week, and last week will be my last full week. Well, next week will be my last full week. I'm sorry.
Well, if I don't get to see you before you move on, all the best. And I'm sure our paths will continue to cross, knowing where your passion and energy lies. So take care.
Thank you, Christina. Take care as well.
Thank you, Christina.
Thanks.
I think we're now to thank you for taking time and just sharing, Sanji. I think we're to other business. Is there anything else for the good of the order for Sam and I?
I think we've covered it all.
Okay, great. Anything, Sam, you want to kind of close in with anything?
Sure. Something big, Senate Bill 1522, that's something that OJDDA, us and Y and everybody was involved in. And I think perhaps YDD, where it's a huge bill. Don't read the whole thing. It's like 26 or something pages long. It's the omnibus bill, but luckily with the help of MESD and others and OJDD, we're able to slide in the ability for JDEP funds to support reentry transition services. We've got, like, I think in 2006 and then again in 2021, we got DOJ opinion, and they said the way our JDEP and YSEP statutes are, our funds can only support the kids while they're inside the walls. We couldn't support the kids once they left. But now the legislature has fixed that with Senate Bill 1522. And also Senate Bill 1522 makes it mandatory that community high schools or neighborhood K-12 high schools accept the credits earned in JDEP, YSEP, LTCT, and hospitals. It was already there for JDEP and YSEP, but then now it's the other programs. So sometimes we run into that where community or neighborhood high schools don't accept our credits and so forth. So that's why, and we are trying to alleviate or remove the barriers for our youth from attaining a high school diploma. And last week, and Molly was invited and she helped spur it too. We were able to host a session for our programs. It was open to DHS, OIA, county staff, whatever, whoever, to provide input on the new diploma requirements, because OD is engaging in stakeholder. And what I didn't want, and the purpose of that was I didn't want them to forget our kids. I didn't want them to create requirements or stipulations that would make it virtually impossible for our kids to graduate or attain a high school diploma. And I felt that they needed to hear the stories and the obstacles and difficulties of not only of our kids, but also our educational programs in educating our youth. So those are three things that we're excited about and worked on. And there's going to be more news on Senate Bill 1522 regarding reentry transition. And Molly knows out of 11 JDEP sites, 10 submitted their budget requests for 22-23, and Norcor sent in theirs today. Yeah. So
Have you got it, Sam? I signed.
Yeah, I got Norcor's. Yes. Yeah. Carol.
Okay. If not, I signed it during this meeting. So if you didn't, I can.
No, I didn't get the signed one, but I got the tentative amount.
Oh, well, let me just send you the signed one.
Yeah, it's okay, Molly. It's all good because the deadline was today at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. But Brian, Anya, as you know, you never get everything on time. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like whatever. But then I have to send a reminder out. Please get it in and so forth. It's like it is what it is. I guess deadlines don't matter.
Timelines a little sooner than we actually need it.
Yeah, deadlines don't matter.
Trick in the book. But in all seriousness, though, this is tremendous news, and that's a tremendous policy change in the state. Because Sam, you may recall, remember, it was the policy push of the Juvenile Justice Committee of YDC to look into transitional services for kids exiting detention facilities. Remember, Sam, we went to Washington, D.C. for that?
Right, and that was a time when we tried to, right,
and that was our capstone project.
Right. And it was also previous to that was one of our goals was to eliminate the mandatory expulsion of kids that brought firearms. We told people they thought it was required, but the federal law, no, it was optional. And that's when we educated people. And then that's when school districts started to not automatically expelling kids for firearms. They thought it was mandatory, but we educated them. It was optional.
So see, there's a lot of good work that this group has done in the past, is doing, and will continue to do.
Yep, Anya, keep sending me to Washington, D.C. with you.
Well, it's a good place to go, seriously. And by the way, this is, I know it's on a personal level, but during the meeting, I got a letter from the White House. Seriously. Well, I did send some, I signed a few petitions to support Ukraine. So Senator Merkley's office just responded like he's out of the office or whatever, leave your number. But the White House responded with a formal letter to Miss Sekino, which was really nice. And so did Schroeder. So Anyway, so yes, Sam, Washington DC is the place to be, but the Center for Juvenile Justice Reform at Georgetown has been doing great work and kind of like helping people understand an issue and make a policy change either on a smaller jurisdiction level or statewide, but it's been a great partnership. And I know Molly and Christina just left, you've been all involved with that group as well.
Okay. Thank you, Anya. Thank you for sharing. Anything else for the good of the order? Tanisha, anything you'd like to share with us? Joe, anything like you would like to come off mute and just share with the small, tiny group?
No, I was just here to listen today. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.